Hey everyone, it's Alex here, your guide through the shadows of the unknown. For those of you new to the channel, I'm a storyteller, a researcher, and a firm believer that the most terrifying tales are the ones whispered just beneath the surface of our own reality. I spend my days digging into the unexplained, the unsettling, the things that make you double-check your locks at night. And tonight, we're venturing deep into a place many of us dream of exploring, but few truly understand the darkness it holds. The Appalachian Trail. Imagine this. You're surrounded by the ancient whispering trees of the Appalachians. The air is crisp, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. Sunlight dapples through the canopy, painting shifting patterns on the trail ahead. You're miles from civilization, just you, your pack, and the endless winding path. It's a dream for so many, a pilgrimage, but for some, it becomes a nightmare from which they never wake. We're not talking about accidents here, not about getting lost or slip and fall. We're talking about vanishing, disappearing without a trace, and not in the distant past, folks. This is happening right now to real people on America's most beloved long-distance hiking trail. This isn't a mystery novel. This is a collection of chilling accounts that paint a horrifying picture of something else out there, something actively preying on those who dare to walk its ancient paths. The Appalachian Trail stretches over 2,000 miles from Georgia all the way to Maine. It's a ribbon of wilderness, beauty, and history. But it's also steeped in folklore, in stories of things that predate colonial settlement, things that indigenous tribes warned against. And what I'm about to tell you isn't just old wives' tales. These are accounts from rangers, experienced hikers, and search and rescue teams who have seen things that defy explanation. Let's start with the cases that first grabbed my attention, the ones that make the hairs on your arms stand up. The missing 411 cases, as they're often called, highlight a pattern of disappearances in national parks and wilderness areas that are disturbingly similar. But on the Appalachian Trail, these patterns take on an even more sinister edge. One of the most unsettling types of disappearances involves experienced hikers, often solo, who simply vanish. Their gear, their tents, sometimes even their backpacks, are found exactly where they left them. It's as if they just stepped away for a moment and never came back. No signs of struggle, no footprints leading off the trail, just emptiness. Take the case of Jerry Largay, an experienced hiker attempting a through hike in 2013. She was in Maine, a rugged and remote section of the trail. She reportedly stepped off the trail to use the restroom just for a moment, but she never returned. An extensive search, one of the largest in Maine's history, found no trace for over 2 years. When her remains were finally discovered just a few miles from the trail, her belongings were still with her, including her cell phone. The cause of death remained undetermined. But here's the truly horrifying part. The area where she was found had been thoroughly searched multiple times. How could an entire body with belongings have been missed by trained professionals for so long? It's almost as if it wasn't there to be found, or wasn't there yet. But it's not just the disappearances that are terrifying. It's the how. It's the sheer unnaturalness of some of these events. Search and rescue personnel who are trained to find people in the wilderness have reported some truly bizarre phenomena. They talk about suddenly feeling an overwhelming sense of dread, of being watched, of hearing whispers that aren't the wind. They've described being led in circles, feeling disoriented even with their GPS, and having their tracking dogs inexplicably refuse to follow a scent, whimpering and backing away from certain areas. One ranger I spoke to, who prefers to remain anonymous, and for good reason, recounted an incident deep in the Smokies. His team was searching for a missing day hiker. They had a strong scent trail, dogs were eager. Then suddenly, the dogs stopped dead. Wouldn't move, started barking at nothing, ears flattened, tails tucked. The air grew heavy, he said. A suffocating silence fell over the forest. Even the birds stopped chirping. He felt an intense pressure, like being physically pushed away from a specific clump of rhododendrons. He said it was like walking into an invisible wall of pure malevolence. They eventually pulled back, completely unnerved. The hiker was never found. And that ranger? He retired shortly after. He just couldn't shake the feeling that something else was actively preventing them from finding that person. And what about the strange encounters? These aren't just stories. These are reports from people who lived to tell them. Hikers have reported seeing figures in the distance, figures that move too fast or appear too still or are just wrong in some fundamental way. They describe them as humanoid, but not quite human, tall, gaunt, sometimes with eyes that reflect no light. These aren't animals. These aren't other hikers. A young woman, let's call her Sarah, was hiking solo through a remote part of Virginia last summer. She was an experienced backpacker, confident in the woods. One evening, as dusk was settling, she was making camp near a small stream. She heard what sounded like heavy footsteps on the path behind her, getting closer. She assumed it was another hiker. She called out a friendly greeting. Silence. The footsteps stopped. She turned, expecting to see someone. Nothing, just the fading light filtering through the trees. But then she felt it, a cold breath on the back of her neck, even though there was no wind. She froze, and then a low, guttural growl right behind her ear. Not like a bear, not like a mountain lion, something ancient and predatory. She didn't look back. She grabbed her bear spray, unclipped her knife, and slowly, deliberately, backed away from her camp, eyes scanning the darkening woods. She didn't stop until she was running, not even bothering to pack up her tent. She hiked all night, terrified, and reached the nearest road by dawn. She never saw what was behind her, but she knows with every fiber of her being that it wasn't human, and it wanted her. These encounters, these disappearances, they aren't isolated incidents. They form a horrifying mosaic, a pattern that suggests something truly terrifying is at play on the Appalachian Trail, something that understands the lay of the land, something that can move silently, something that can instill pure terror, and something that actively hunts. The indigenous peoples of this land, particularly the Cherokee, have ancient legends of beings that reside in the deep woods, spirits that are not benevolent. They speak of the stone-clad or Nun-Yunu-Wi, a formidable humanoid creature with impenetrable skin, possessing immense strength and an insatiable hunger. Other legends speak of the little people, but not the friendly kind, the kind that lure you off the path, disorient you, and lead you to your doom. Are these just myths, or are they warnings passed down through generations about the very real entities that still roam those ancient hills? The sheer number of vanishing hikers, The inexplicable circumstances of their disappearance, the consistent reports of strange phenomena by seasoned professionals, and the unsettling encounters of those who barely escaped, it all points to a darkness far deeper than mere human error or natural predators. This isn't just a challenging hike. For some, it's an entrance into a realm where the veil between our world and something truly ancient and malevolent is terrifyingly thin. And what makes it so real, so chillingly plausible, is that this isn't happening in some forgotten corner of the world. It's happening in our backyard, on one of America's most iconic trails. Every single year, hikers go in, and some just don't come out. And the silence around these cases, the way they're often quietly filed away as missing persons, only adds to the unsettling feeling that we're dealing with something the authorities don't understand, or worse, don't want us to understand. So, the next time you think about hitting the trail, about escaping into the wilderness, remember these stories. Remember that beneath the beauty of those ancient mountains, something far older, far more sinister, might be waiting. Something that sees you not as an adventurer, but as prey. If you found this exploration into the shadows as compelling as I did, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We've got so many more untold tales and chilling true accounts to uncover, and you won't want to miss our next deep dive, where we explore another chilling phenomenon that defies explanation. But before you go, I have to ask you, given these terrifying accounts, if you were standing at the trailhead right now, knowing what you know, would you still dare to step onto the Appalachian Trail? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And stay safe out there, folks. Because sometimes the real monsters aren't in fairy tales. They're just waiting in the woods. Dozens of people vanish on the Appalachian Trail every year. Some found dead, some never found at all. What if I told you it's still happening right now, and some of the reasons are the kind you don't expect? Hi, my name's Mark Ellis. I'm a long-distance hiker and search and rescue volunteer. I spend my summers on ridgelines and my nights reading missing person reports. I tell stories about people who get lost for good reason, because it's my job to know how the mountains take people, and sometimes how people take others. This is the story of vanishing hikers on the Appalachian Trail. The real, terrifying things that are happening to people right now. The Appalachian Trail is more than a path. It's 2,190 miles of ridgelines, river crossings, and fog that rolls in like ocean mist. Millions of people walk parts of it every year. Hundreds attempt the whole thing. For most, the trail is freedom. For a few, it becomes a place where the world unexpectedly collapses into a single, terrible moment. Let's start with something very ordinary and very true. People on the trail are vulnerable to other people. In the winter of 2007 to 2008, a drifter and serial murderer named Gary Michael Hilton preyed on hikers and campers in southern Appalachian forests. The crimes were real, brutal, and solved. A reminder that danger on the trail can be human, not mystical. That case and others like it are proof that sometimes the thing that finds you is another person with a weapon and a dark agenda. But human predators are only one face of the mountain. People die here from weather, from hypothermia, from falls. and sometimes bodies aren't found for months or years. In 2013, Geraldine Largay wandered off the trail in Maine and survived many days alone before she died. Her remains were only discovered 2 years later. The way someone can simply get disoriented and disappear into the trees is not a horror movie plot. It's documented, and it keeps happening. Even last year, hikers were found dead or in desperate situations on sections of the trail. In September 2024, a 67-year-old hiker was located deceased near a shelter in Virginia. Investigators said no foul play was suspected, but the image of a person heading into the woods who never returns stays with families. In Maine, there were alarming search and rescue operations on Mount Katahdin this season, where one hiker's body was discovered and another remained missing for a time. These aren't legends. They're news items with names and dates. Here's the part that creeps people out the most. Being lost changes people. Panic narrows choices. People who should have stayed still begin moving, walking farther from help. The terrain, the weather, and the way the brain melts under fear create patterns that are easy to misunderstand as something supernatural. But the truth is, the wilderness scrambles navigation, and the human mind can become its own worst enemy. That combination produces disappearances that feel inexplicable and terrifying to those left behind. There are cases where a hiker's car is found at a trailhead, boots gone, no tracks leading away, and the official record ends with unknown or undetermined. Families wait. Searches churn through maples and boulders. People point at patterns and call them mysteries. Law enforcement points at the limits of evidence. What's true is this: not every disappearance has a neat, explainable ending. Sometimes a person simply vanishes from the map the moment they step into the trees. Predators on the path, not monsters, people. Hilton's case is one of the clearest examples. A man moving along Appalachian forests, violent and murderous. There have been other violent incidents near the trail and in the national forests that border it. That reality should make every hiker consider their surroundings differently. Weather and exposure. Cold comes fast at altitude. A sheltered valley at noon can become a death trap after nightfall. Hypothermia and falls are quietly brutal. Searchers often find gear scattered, half-eaten food, or a boot. Small human traces that are the opposite of the grand supernatural reveal, but far more chilling, because they are real. Disorientation and cognitive collapse. People who know the trail can still become lost when panic sets in. The brain doesn't make plans when it's terrified, it spirals. You walk until you're exhausted, and then you sleep, and sometimes you don't wake up. Geraldine Largay's story is the clearest tragic example of how a few wrong steps can become a disappearance, the logistical nightmare. The trail is long, cell service is patchy. Jurisdictional lines between the Forest Service, National Park Service, and state agencies mean searches can get fragmented. Add private land adjacent to public corridors, and you get places where people fall off the map and stay off it. Search and rescue teams do heroic work, but sometimes they run out of time. I remember a call-out I was on. A solo hiker didn't return to his car. We searched for 48 hours, scouring spurs and hollows. We found his backpack wedged under a rhododendron, his map open to the wrong side, his water bottle half full. He'd slipped off a faint connector trail at dusk and then kept walking until he collapsed against a cliff face. That's not a ghost story. That's a mistake that becomes permanent if you don't get lucky. Families of the missing live with a different kind of night terror. They wait for police calls that sometimes never come. They read search reports filled with phrases like "no foul play suspected," which can mean many things. They file into ranger stations and watch volunteers comb the woods in a way that makes the mountains feel less like a place to breathe and more like a place to lose pieces of your life. Those families are the real horror actors here. So what's actually happening on the trail right now? People keep hiking, sometimes without experience, sometimes in bad weather, sometimes in sections with known risks. Criminals do operate near the trail on rare occasions, and animals and the elements do what they always do. Search and rescue teams keep finding bodies or remains months later, or they find nothing at all. These are ongoing facts. They are not bedtime stories. If you want to feel horror that doesn't ask you to suspend disbelief, imagine this. A friend hugs you at the trailhead, walks away, and by nightfall, your phone is the only light left in your hands. A shelter sits empty with a pair of boots by the fire pit. A ranger holds a thin laminated flyer with a photo and the word "missing" across the top. That is the kind of dread that comes from reality. Slow, administrative, sharp, and unrelenting. If you're the type who gets drawn to real horror like this, subscribe, because I dig into cases like these every week, with names, dates, and the hard facts. Hit the bell so you don't miss the next deep dive. And if you found this disturbing, and you probably did, watch our next video on what search and rescue actually does when night falls on Appalachian Ridge. It'll change the way you pack your bag. Which of these real dangers do you think is the most likely reason a hiker simply disappears without a trace? Human, weather, or the terrifying failure of the mind to navigate under stress? Tell me below. I read every comment,